We're going to be hearing about designing with daylight, and we have Dr. Phillip Greenup from ARUP here with us. And in fact, I might promote you up onto the panel straight away, Phillip. We're also then going to be hearing from Peter Romanello, who is our international guest, and I can see that he's online as well. I'll bring you up a little bit later, Peter, and Peter's going to be discussing collaboration in projects and whatever else takes his fancy for today, which will be great. And then we'll finally wrap up with a quick panel discussion. Peter will be joining us on that, but we also have Dr. Gillian Izaradi and Peter and Wendy Davis is coming in from the University of Sydney onto that one. So without further ado, we're going to be talking with Phillip. Oh, just a reminder once again, if you do have any questions for our speaker as we go, please fire them onto the Q&A button there, and the speaker will either pick them up himself or I can feed those questions to him in the last 5 minutes. So Dr. Phillip Greenup is a senior lighting designer with broad international experience. He's the senior lighting designer at ARUP, and he offers integrated design and technical expertise in natural and artificial lighting, and is widely respected for his expertise in daylight design, assessment, and consulting. He understands daylight design from both an architectural and technical perspective, and is passionate about helping to create spaces that are a joy to occupy. He's gained valuable international experience working in 4 of ARUP's offices in Australia, the UK, and in the US. So without further ado, Dr. Phillip Greenup. Phillip, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Tim, and good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coming along. So I'm going to be talking about designing with daylight. As introduced, I'm a lighting designer, 15 years or so experience in lighting design. And the thing which I am very interested in as a lighting designer is the people's experience of space, the human condition, and how light interacts with that. And yeah, specifically around daylight and bringing it all together as a lighting design. Just making sure you can see. So let's not be afraid of natural light, the wondrous thing that it is. Let's turn towards the light. And yeah, I'm based in Melbourne. I've been locked down for the better part of the year. And now we're getting out of lockdown. We're getting out. We're seeing the world. And oh, geez, it's great to be out there. To get out there again and walk freely amongst people, albeit with our masks on, and see the sky, clouds, sunsets, be able to walk in the forest, to see the light streaming through the trees, be able to walk along the pathways and drive along the open roads and get further than 5 kilometres away from home and see that dappled light along the pathway leading away. The beauty and natural wonder of natural light is something which I'm connecting with potentially even more now as a result of being in lockdown and being shut down at home for so long. It's great to be out there again. Also looking forward to getting into our big buildings and considering the experience that daylight gives us in our indoor spaces. Of course, you've got the Pantheon there, the classic architecture, the Roman architecture.
Phillip, if I can just interrupt for a second, are you sharing your screen with us? Because we aren't seeing.
Thank you for asking.
Because I saw some wonderful slides when we did the run through, so I don't want to miss out. So it's the green share screen. There we go. It's coming up. It's coming up.
All right. So you're seeing that now?
Yes, I am.
Great. All right. Those were the beautiful images I was trying to talk to that nobody was seeing. Thank you for letting me know. Of the outside light outside, and inside, of course, we have similar experiences. So we have the sunlight moving around and engaging our spaces, activating our spaces, and adding a bit of excitement to our day. I got the great reading hall here in the State Library of Victoria. An amazing space to inhabit. The grandeur of that space, the experience of being in there, that's kind of opens the heart, opens the mind to the books and whatever else is in there. High Point Shopping Centre in the middle, and then of course the Oculus in New York City, one of my favorite spaces that I've experienced in the world. What daylight can do for us as occupants of an indoor space as well as an outdoor space. That's the sort of excitement that I'm engaged by, I'm excited by and want to talk about. We have, of course, evolved for many, many thousands of years as humans under natural light. We did everything in our day by natural light. We took all of our cues from natural light. We slept at night. We didn't sleep. We didn't wake through. Natural light is in our genes. It's that connection with the outside world which we inherently crave, have done for thousands of years, still do. We need to have that connection. And of course, daylight is a free light source. It is the most sustainable source of light. It has the ability to save energy in terms of being able to not having to use all of our electric lighting during the day. And that's amazing. That's a great benefit. My focus here today, at least, is talking about the impact on the human experience of space and less so about the energy savings that you can have, but that is definitely a great benefit there. So as a lighting designer, I acknowledge that natural light is a key part to the lighting design process. It has to be part of a complete, holistic, combined lighting design process, including both natural light and electric light, and putting the two together as our entire lighting design. And it is, with that in mind, crucial to embrace daylight design as the beginning of the 24-hour, the holistic lighting design process. We design for daylight first, and we supplement that later with electric lighting. And I'll talk a bit more about how we do that a little later on. So with all that in mind, and knowing that natural light and electric light combine together to create our entire lit design, how is it then that often, not always, but often, daylight receives little consideration by the lighting designers? Well, there's a few good reasons for that. One of those is the constantly variable nature of natural light. We can see here a view from a single point somewhere in Long Island Sound. Across the course of the day, across the course of the year, of course, the sun moves. We know where it goes, but it's not straightforward. The weather changes, clouds, snow, rain, clear skies, grey skies, time of day, the color temperature changes, the color changes in your dawn and dusk skies. It's that inherent constant change of natural light that gives it its beauty and gives us our connection with the outside world. That we know the time of day, we know the weather just by seeing, deliberately or otherwise, consciously or otherwise, the changes in the light that pass by. And as a result of that constantly variable nature of natural light, we need to treat this design as both art and science. We want to create spaces that are amazing to occupy, but in order to do that with an understanding of light and sunlight and daylight, we need to have a degree of science in there and create this elaborate shading systems and whatever else that goes into your daylight design system. So there's an element of physics there. Now, I've got a physics background, unusually. Most designers don't have that, of course. So I'm into that, but most designers won't be so excited about having to incorporate some physics into their lighting design process. Mix that with the evolution of building materiality and building structure. We now have a lot deeper spaces, we're a lot further away from the windows than we used to be more than 100, 200 years ago. And we end up with being further away from light. And daylight design becomes what might be seen as a dark art, which is kind of curious given that the daylight is the most abundant form of light that there is. So acknowledging then that daylight design is key and a key part of lighting design and a key understanding of the lit experience, what are some key considerations for daylight design? Let's run you through a few of those. The first of those, not surprisingly, is to start early. You're at pre-planning, you're at master planning. It's at that point when you can make the biggest impact on your daylit experience, your lit experience of all of the spaces throughout your site. The separation of the buildings, the height of the buildings, the overshadowing, the shape of the buildings, the building envelopes, forms, how they interact with each other, needs to be considered very early on. It's that then when we can get the maximum benefit to future daylight amenity. Secondly, understanding that daylight design is more than green star and well buildings and daylight factors. Those tools are there and they have great purpose. Sustainable design is absolutely something we should be aiming for and are doing. And those points are there and they are part of the bigger picture of sustainability ratings and whatever you have. We have ESD consultants who work in that space, who do that sort of assessment, who generate that sort of reporting and create those sort of points and credits. They can work in that space. My greater interest as a lighting designer is the lit experience of people in and around our buildings. Thirdly, we need to understand the daylight climate of where our building or our site is. Is it in a very clear sky condition, such as here at Abu Dhabi, where you've got just abundant blue skies and sun throughout the year? Is it more of a cloudy environment, such as Singapore, which has a lot more cloud than it has sun? Is it a darker environment further away from the equator, the northern hemisphere, London and beyond? You need to understand all that because it impacts on our daylight design. It impacts on the fenestration and the built form. Also, we need to understand orientation. Do we face towards the sun? Do we face away from the sun? North or south? How do we deal with the east and west with low morning and low afternoon sun? And how does that impact our lit experience? How does that impact our daylight design? The next thing is that it's key to design for flexibility, for future flexibility of the use of the space. In a gallery, for example, design a daylight system that can be adjusted by the curators, by the building occupants, to change according to the needs of the exhibitions. Do you need it particularly dark as you've got sensitive objects in there? Be able to control that. In an office environment, the use of blinds are critical for building occupants wherever they're in a space where they're doing demanding visual tasks, to be able to control their visual environment, make sure that they're comfortable in their visual environment. At homes, where we all are working at the moment, I am at least, curtains and Venetian blinds and whatever else you might have. Normally, less demanding visual tasks that you would have in an office space, but still some degree of control and just creating an atmosphere that you want in your home. So designing for that flexibility is important. As important, potentially more important, is collaboration. Now, of course, we acknowledge that daylight design is ultimately the responsibility of the architects and the interior designers. We work with them as lighting designers. We consider the lit experience and how that integrates with the electric lighting. But ultimately, we're working with and consulting with the architects, building owners, giving them advice on what kind of fenestrations, what kind of windows, what kind of shading, what kind of skylights, where everything goes, how it all works together. Also working with the ESD consultants, as I mentioned before, the facade consultants, those who are developing the facade systems, the glazings, the shadings, whatever else goes on the outside of our building, all the way around. And of course, the services engineers, making sure that we're not, for instance, overloading the space with so much daylight that the air conditioning doesn't work anymore. Collaboration is key to making it all work. So that's just a few sort of guiding principles on daylight design, a few things to consider as doing daylight design. We're talking here about holistic lighting design, bringing an electric and natural lighting design together as one lit design. And how do we bring that together? Well, firstly, starting with, it is not just about designing the electric light for nighttime and then chucking in some PE cells, some light sensors near the windows and turning the lights off during the day. It's more to it than that. It's also not replacing daylight with circadian light. Now, circadian light is great. It has its benefits, absolutely, definitely worth looking at. But it doesn't replace daylight. Bringing people closer to the windows is far more effective than getting a great circadian lighting system in an internal space, if you can do that. Now, as a lighting designer, we consider the experience of people occupying our space, their journey through the space, how they move, how they occupy, how they use the space. Here, we consider it by both day and night. We consider, somebody's coming into a foyer, then they move into a lift shaft, come out to the office floor plate, for instance. What is their lit experience? And what does it change to at night? And what happens when you change from day to night and back again? Do you get by day one thing, by night another? Or do you try and create it so you don't even notice the difference? You're in a casino, you don't know whether it's daytime or nighttime. Or do you create it so that the drama is created at the sunset? Say when people are leaving the office, you get that dusk experience, which is so dramatic. All part of the dynamic lit experience of occupying a building. And daylight itself can also be treated as something with a theatrical element. It helps delineate the boundary between inside and outside. It creates contrast. It creates visual interest. It guides you to the outside. You're coming out of a underground train station, for instance, and you're coming up and you can see the light, drama. You can almost hear the angels singing. You're finding your way out. You've arrived. And you can tell that by subtle clues through the space. You can see more daylight. You can see the color temperature change, and you can just get these glimpses of the outside world. Daylight can intuitively guide us through these spaces. So daylight is a lit lighting element for our use. After all, it is another light source. As a lighting designer, we're used to now using LED, used to be fluorescent, metal halide, halogen, incandescent, high pressure sodium, and so on and so on and so on. Now it's pretty much all LED. Daylight is another one of these light sources. It's an all-pervading, it's ever-changing light source. It's everywhere outside, and it's always changing. But it is not a light source for us to be using as lighting designers. It is an important part of a lighting designer's light source arsenal and should not be ignored and left to somebody else to consider what happens to the experience of space with that as a light source. I talked to you as a lighting designer, as I mentioned before. We're talking about the impact of natural light on the human experience. Daylight, natural light is key to that experience, must be considered as part of the holistic lighting design process. Let's turn toward the natural light and create spaces of ephemeral beauty and just a joy to occupy. That's what we're after. Thank you.
Let me just unmute myself. Thank you, Philip. That's fantastic, and I'm glad we sorted the slides out there because
So am I.
as usual, ARUP always put together some great slide presentations. I do have a question from the floor. I'm not sure if this is your field, but Michael asks, how does biophilic design and use of natural filtered light or diffused light to create a more productive and healthier built environment in the healthcare environment? Biophilic design?
Yeah,
it's
so
a word I don't understand.
my understanding of biophilic design is designed to mimic nature effectively, because we all have an inherent biophilic bent. We all attracted inherently to nature. We want to look outside and see the greenery. Absolutely effective natural light design is part of biophilic design, giving people that natural connection with the outside world. And if done effectively, it certainly can lead to more happy occupants, more engaged occupants, more productive occupants as a result. And in the healthcare environment, access to daylight and access to view are key to recovery rates. There's been studies that have shown, we all talked about before, showing that people recover better and quicker if they have access to light, natural light, if they have access to view. And there are some great examples of healthcare environments out there which do that really well.
Okay. Do you want to give our attendees, I know you showed some wonderful examples, and I love the reading room at the State Library. I only just discovered it on my last trip to Melbourne. But any other case studies people should look up on great use of light, of natural light?
Yeah, just flick through a few of these, go back to the beginning. The Broad Museum, where is it? In San Francisco, is a great example of the use of natural light. So I wasn't personally involved in this one, but our designers out of the US and the UK were. And the way that the building envelope was opened up to allow natural light in there, both through the skylights and in the envelope, the facade that you can see there, in a way that excludes direct sun coming in there, but you go into that space and you just are bathed in this natural illumination. And if the cloud passes in front of the sun, you notice it. You have that
Mm.
connection with the outside world. You can tell whether it's pouring rain outside or bright and sunny. Of course, it has the ability to change that. There are blinds and other devices in there to control the natural light so that it can be used for curatorial purposes. But it's just an amazing space to inhabit.
All right, that's a great little bit of homework for our attendees. Phillip, thank you for your presentation and sharing some of those, all the importance of bringing natural light in. It's always good to get somebody from ARUP in for these presentations, and we thank you for your time today. Please, a thunderous round of applause for Phillip. Thanks, buddy. Cheers.
Thank you very much.